Hey BookTube, it's Samantha and I am doing my July wrap-up. Now, I didn't read as much as I wanted to this month, but I finally actually think I'm starting to get back into the reading habit again. So I am not necessarily disappointed by this month. I'm actually excited about this coming month, especially considering that it's becoming final now. I am moving. I'm probably going to be moving at the end of this month, if not the beginning of September. So it's going to be a crazy August. So I'm definitely going to be trying to read in order to manage all the stress. So why don't we talk about the books that I read for this month? The first book that I'm going to talk about is No Rest for the Dead, that was edited together by Andrew Gulley. This is a book that I've already done a full review on, so I'll leave a little link up above if you want something more in depth about this book. Just a general overall, it is a mystery book. It is talking about this couple that they work on a museum together and the husband winds up dead. The wife is arrested, convicted, and executed for his murder. That's not a spoiler. It happens within the first or second chapter, so that's not a spoiler whatsoever. But she is executed for his murder. There are some people in her life who knew her. I guess it's not her life because she's dead, but there are some people who knew her that believe that she is innocent. So 10 years have gone by, and as part of her will, she wanted everyone who was a part of her life to get together just in memoriam of remembering her. There are people that think that she is innocent are going to try and use this as a way to try and find out who actually killed the husband. I really was captivated by the first half of this book. There was probably like 5 or 6 different people that I'm like, yeah, I could probably see them doing it. So I really didn't have a clue on who actually killed the husband. The ending of it was a twist for me. I did not see it coming until like kind of towards the end. I had assumed that the majority of the book was going to be taking place during the reunion and that it would slowly unfold everyone's stories and whatnot. But that's not what happened. It was definitely most of the book focusing on each one of the characters as it was leading up to the reunion, and then the reunion was kind of the climax scene. So that was interesting. It wasn't what I was expecting, but not necessarily in a bad way. It just wasn't expecting it. So I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars. If you are into the mystery genre, I highly recommend this. The next book that I read was one that my mom owns. I read this when I was at home. I do a little video with my family and trying to just show you guys a little bit about my life when I go back home. But when I was home, I decided I wanted to read something a little bit light, and so I picked up Chasers of the Light by Tyler Knott Gregson. My mom has this basket of books by her chair that she's currently in the process of reading, or she just likes to pick up at random times. And this is one of those books that she had in that basket. So I figured I'd give it a shot. It's really, really small. It's basically just a collection of love poems. For me, I gave this 3 stars because I wasn't necessarily looking for a love collection of poems. That's not necessarily something that I enjoy in reading. I mean, it's definitely a light read. When you look at the book, there's a lot of beautiful pictures that are in there. And one of his little quirks is that all of his poems are written on a typewriter. And he writes them on really unconventional pieces of paper. You'll notice that some of them, it's written on the back of her seat, and you can see he went to Walmart. So it's kind of cool that he writes it on a typewriter. It's kind of his little niche. 3 stars. If you're looking for a collection of love poems, highly recommend it. They have beautiful pictures. I'm sure you'll love it. It just wasn't my thing. Next book we're talking about is one I've been reading for quite a while. It's about time I finished it, and that's Pet Sematary by Stephen King. I was right that this would be a 5-star read. I love this book. I loved it. And I know in my Stephen King video of books I've DNF'd by him, which I'll link that up above, I talked about how I don't find it scary about aliens, or like Native American burial ground things. And I realized that this has a Native American burial ground, like that's what brings them back to life. But it was different in this book because it was more focused on the psychological effects of what was happening and what it was doing to them as a family. I don't know. There was just something different about it with this book that I found really captivating. I loved the build-up to the climax of this book, and dude, it leaves you hanging to the very end. Like, it was going slow and I kept on wanting to be like, oh my god, let's get to it, and so I kept reading and reading, but it was perfect pacing. All of the events that are talked about in here, some of them are kind of like normal family problems, but they're related to what happens with this story. So I just absolutely loved it. If you don't know what Pet Sematary is, it is a horror novel about this family that moves to this house. Where is the house? I'm sure it's in Maine. It's Stephen King. I'm sure it's in Maine. Actually, it is in Maine. It is in Maine. But they end up buying this house that is right on a highway where a lot of semis go by. They are just trying to start a new life together with their 2 kids and their cat, Church. The cat, unfortunately, gets killed by one of the semis, and the neighbor across the highway named Judd says, hey, I know of a place where we can reset what has happened to the cat. So things kind of take off from there. I just love this book. I always hear really rave reviews about this book, and it's definitely for a good reason. This is one of Stephen King's best works for sure. The last book that I read, I actually read in one sitting. It was a really fast read for me, and that is A Long Way Down by Jason Reynolds. I talked about this in a recent book haul that I did. After reading Pet Sematary, I wanted to give myself somewhat of a quick read because it took me so long to read that one. And this one, I mean, look at it. It was a quick read. This book is about a kid whose brother is killed in, it seems like, a gang-related shooting. I'm gonna read the back cover of this for you because I think that really accurately describes what the book's about, and then I'm gonna add a little bit to it. Will's older brother, Sean, has been shot, dead. Will feels a sadness so great he can't explain it. But in his neighborhood, there are the rules. Number 1, crying. Don't, no matter what. Number 2, snitching. Don't, no matter what. Rule number 3, revenge. Do, no matter what. But bullets miss. You can get the wrong guy, and there's always someone else who knows to follow the rules. Like I said, it's kind of gang related, and the brother decides that he's going to go into the elevator and go kill the guy who killed his brother, who he thinks killed his brother. And on the way down, you follow what happens in his process of thinking about killing this guy. I'm not going to give out spoilers about what happens because literally the entire book is just him going down the elevator. I really enjoyed this book. I think it was a smart decision to write it in verse rather than as an actual novel because I think it got the point across a lot better than if it was written as a novel. It just felt right. I really liked the different perspectives that were shown as to why people would make certain decisions and what different events happen in people's lives. It was definitely kind of a heavier book just because these things are really happening to people and they're definitely happening to kids, and kids are the ones who are dealing with these really serious issues. In these neighborhoods, they're probably not being told any other way except to live by the rules. This book really makes me think of my Boys Town kids. I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but I used to work for Boys Town. I worked with teenage boys between the ages of 13 and 18 to try and give them a restart on life. And this book, I was thinking about them the whole entire time because I know some of them, this was life for them, and just trying to talk them out of that way of life. It's very difficult, especially when the only way you know how to live is by the rules. On Goodreads, there were some people that were saying, don't have your kids read this book, like there's inappropriate language or whatever. Honestly, I think it is good for kids to read this. I would think like, teenagers or maybe even middle school kids. Honestly, I understand it's really heavy subject, but it's written in a way I think they could understand. I think these are topics that these kids are dealing with in one form or another. And I think it's a really good way to start a conversation about the decisions that we make and the consequences of those decisions. So personally, I think it's a great book for a kid to read. I wouldn't say this for elementary school kids at all, but maybe like 7th grade or more. If they're in middle school, I would say make sure you have a conversation with your child. In high school, they could probably get through this heavy matter without necessarily needing to have a conversation, but it might be good to still have that conversation. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars because I wish the ending was a little bit different, but I also understand why he wrote it the way he did. Just for me, I felt like it didn't wrap it up perfectly, but like I said, I do really agree with the decision to write it in verse. Just the way that it was done with him going down the elevator, I think was also done really well. 4 out of 5 stars, and would definitely recommend it. I read this in like an hour and a half. So let's say you're in a reading slump and you need something to pick yourself back up, I recommend this. I also heard that the audiobook is actually narrated by the author. So those were the books that I read for this month in July. I am working on a couple different little videos that one I'll post sooner rather than later, but I'm just very excited about this month in August. I am finally back into the reading mode and I'm just really excited to jump into some books and talk about them with you. So let me know what you read for the month of July and maybe what you are reading for the month of August, and I'll see you around. See ya.